We are here at Stribling's, New York on WOR 710 AM on your digital dial and iHeart Media channel. You know, whether you spend $50,000 or $50 million, purchase of a home or apartment, condominium, place to live is usually the biggest, largest expense of anybody's life. It's more than anything they're ever going to buy. And it's very, very important. As we've talked about before, it's like if you stub your toe, you can go to the neighborhood doctor. But if you have a major, important medical problem, you see the top doctor. You don't go to the neighborhood doctor. And if you want the top real estate broker, I've brought one of them in, my sister, Cathy Taub. And she is, welcome, Cathy. Say hello. Sorry.
Hey, Rob.
I have a number of questions for you. If I'm going to be somebody who's going to sell my apartment, what are some of the considerations? What's an important consideration in selecting a broker? What's the process? How do I find Cathy Taub?
Hopefully I'm not too hard to find. I definitely don't want to be the best kept secret.
Google
it's the
Cathy.
Opposite. So, this is a really important question because there are so many aspects to selling in Manhattan. And so I think let's go through the process. One important piece, of course, is what the price point of the particular apartment or house, condominium or co-op is, because sellers should be looking for someone who has experience, number one, and number two, who is, I think, very smart and agile. But in that context, you don't want to hire someone who typically their bread and butter is $5 to $10 million listings if you are selling a studio or a one-bedroom apartment. So one thing you need to do is, and there are lots of ways for sellers to find brokers. I mean, if you go online to stribling.com or streeteasy.com, there are a number of aggregator sites like StreetEasy and NewYorkTimes.com, and obviously you can look through all of the various firms' websites, including ours at Stribling. And you can get a sense as a seller of where, what category or price category an agent is particularly adept in, or typically is their market, because it does make a difference in terms of how you market a property as to what the price of the property is. So beyond that, and you can find there are lots and lots of agents in the city. There's no shortage of that. It seems like everyone's getting their real estate license these days. But once you've narrowed that down, one other thing I would say is ask around, because it's always good to get referrals as a seller when you're looking for a listing agent. And one of the most important aspects of selling is to make sure that your agent is smart, honest, and very knowledgeable. Unless you've got a child who's just started and you want to jumpstart their career, it's really not advisable when you have your most important asset being sold by someone who doesn't know really what they're doing, doesn't have a lot of experience under their belt. That's very important. Additionally, of course, it's important to select someone who's with a firm that's very reputable. It's not important to go with the biggest firm or the smallest firm or the medium-sized firm. You want a firm that has an excellent reputation, like a Stribling, for example, because there's a lot that happens in this process, and having managers and leaders of firms that support the agent is very important, as well as the expenses, the marketing expenses and marketing commitment that they'll give to a seller for advertising and promoting and exposing their property.
How do we do that now? I mean, and how much has the internet come into play?
The internet is key. As I mentioned before, we have these aggregator sites like StreetEasy and NewYorkTimes.com, and while all of the individual firms' websites are important, really these aggregator sites is supplying sellers and buyers with an incredible amount of information. So the market information is completely transparent now, and I would say the number one go-to for buyers and brokers is obviously online. And so once a broker gets a listing, the way the process works is that We all electronically transmit all the information about the listing. We get the photography together, the floor planning, the web copy. All of that is really, really important. I'd say photography is really critical in terms of marketing properties now, because online buyers will click through photographs, and they love doing that, as do brokers who are searching for their customers. So the pre-marketing process is really important, and I would add that a seller considering an agent should definitely review that agent's web presence and see how they've presented other properties of theirs in the past, because that's a key part to marketing and exposing a property in a most positive light. So that's the number one way that we expose properties now is obviously is online, and then there's some more traditional conventional methods like direct mailing and emailing for brokers to emailing to other agents throughout the city, and other more conventional methods like that.
Well, it's just something that struck me. What's interesting about your business is that you could work in a conventional, another kind of office, or work in any other business where you work closely with somebody on a daily basis, and yet you'll never actually go to their home. Whereas when you're a real estate broker, not only are you going to somebody's home, you're in their home and you're walking through it, and you're intimately involved with their life and their personal property. So it seems to me that you have and maintain special kinds of relationships with people.
Yeah, I think that there's so many other aspects that I'd like to get to. I don't know if we have enough time in terms of agent selection, but
I just thought of that because I've been working for years and years and years with our engineer, Robert. We live around the block from each other, and we barely even pass one another on the street, and we have never been to each other's homes.
Well, I mean, part of the process is an important part of the process for a seller is to actually like the listing agent, because they're going to be spending a lot of time with a listing agent. So when I go in on a pitch and the first time I'm seeing an apartment, before I sit down and give my assessment of the market and why I'm the right agent, I do a walkthrough with the sellers, and so one of the most exciting and fun parts of my job, obviously, is seeing a lot of different real estate in Manhattan, and we're all real estate pornographers these days. But I think it's important to have a right personality mix as well. That's not to be underplayed, because the amount of emails and phone conversations in this relationship is intense, and way more than sellers anticipate when they're in the interviewing process. So for sure, that's really important.
So there's chemistry involved, and everybody does like you.
Well, thanks, Rob. I'm glad to hear that from my brother. Another unusual compliment. But yes, chemistry is really important. And also, people work very differently now. There are a lot of teams, and then there are people like myself. I work with one or two other people. So I don't like a big team, because I am such a control freak. I like to really stay on top of everything that's happening.
I had no idea.
And if the team gets too big, in my opinion, it's very hard to stay on top of everything that's happening with a listing. And that's a kind of service I like to deliver. But people have, the very different styles and different ways of promoting now.
Well, I've seen what you assemble when you do a pitch, and you put together something that looks like a big, a small coffee table book. What do you do? What is it? What does it contain?
Well, everybody has different pitch packages, and some people are moving into iPads and showing their previous listings and how they present and that kind of thing. I typically will have a hard copy and follow that up with a link. So what I present is my letters of reference. I present information about Stribling. I do a comp report and a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet showing where properties have sold that are similar to the one that I'm pitching, or if there isn't anything that's relevant recently, I'll show neighborhood comps. So I try to give relevant information without being overbearing in the pitch package. But a most important aspect, I think, besides the collateral, is myself or whoever else the seller is meeting, and whether there is that chemistry and how they feel and what kind of referrals I think are coming their way.
Well, you're not even promoting yourself strong enough, Cathy, because I will. But what I do notice is I've bought and sold a lot of properties in my many 60 years on this earth. And what I've seen is brokers are often promoting the firm that they work for, and they have brochures about that. But what I've seen you present is especially your letters of reference, which I think are really important because you have a diverse group of clients and they explain who you are and what you do without you having to do that. And that's very impressive as well. And plus your knowledge as an attorney, let's mention that.
Thanks, Rob. I mean, the hardest part for me in these meetings is doing the brag and in the pitch meetings, and that's really important. It's great when I have these letters of reference. Really hard to get people to write them, but I do have a good share of them, and I can't emphasize enough how important that is for someone an independent source to be saying how great I am or how great whoever else their meeting is, and that's really critical for a seller to make sure that they're not just hiring somebody whose postcard came in the mail or who they saw on a television show. There's a lot of
or heard on a radio show. Well, I have a lot of people, and I have on various previous shows, and I'm on television a lot with people in the financial services business, and people are incredibly diligent. We've talked about this before. They do intense research when they're going to buy a car. And, they're I can save 17 cents if I travel 200 miles to go over here and get the car there. And one area where they don't, but they should be more picky and really do more research is in the real estate business. So that's why I'm telling you to give the brag.
Well, of course, I couldn't agree with you more because when you're talking about millions of dollars, it's such an important decision because and people don't really appreciate it. And I always tell them that you don't appreciate how important the broker is until you're closing that deal. And I always hear from my sellers and buyers how grateful they were that they were working with me because there are a lot of things that can go wrong, and you might not appreciate it up front or recognize what's involved in this process, particularly this arcane process in Manhattan where we've got real estate practices that are really particular to Manhattan and that we don't see in it any other places.
Cathy Taub, tell us where to find you on the internet.
I am at www.stribling.com. You can punch in my name, Cathy with a C, Cathy, Taub, or just Google me at Cathy Taub. There's plenty that will come up when you do that.
Cathy is the one that,
I should say
aside from
C-Taub,
the Cathy Taub that is the Nobel Prize winner, or is that you as well? Cathy will come up on Twitter, or you can contact Tony Simone on our WOR website, and he'll direct you to Cathy, or look at my website, www.robtaub.com. Cathy, thank you very much for joining us again on Stribling's New York.
Thanks, Rob.